Welcome, viewer, back to Strike Fighters 2 Vietnam, following the exploits of Lieutenant Commander Devin Horner as he flies A6 intruders off the USS Enterprise. Happy New Year! It's now January 2nd, 1967. And you know what that means? It's time for the hangar radio to switch over and start playing music from 1967. Starting with Windy by The Association, which would become #1 on the Billboard charts in July of 1967. Today's mission is to provide armed reconnaissance near Bac Ninh. Search out and destroy enemy targets moving into the vicinity. Call sign is Cobra. Aircraft will be 2 A6 intruders. Takeoff time of 11:22. Landing at 12:09. Now this one is going to be a little bit interesting today. You've seen me fly armed reconnaissance missions before, and usually I'll take 4 aircraft, I'll load them up with a variety of bombs and munitions, and then we'll go and we'll loiter over the target for kind of a long time and just enjoy getting to see the explosions from different bombs and what they look like. Well, today that's not going to be the case, because let's take a look at our map and I'll show you why that's not a good idea. As you can see, the mission is bringing us into the capital region today, up to Bac Ninh, which is just east of Hanoi. It's right in the heart of all of these enemy fighter squadrons, and in the area that has the densest AA concentration in the world at this time. So, loitering is not going to be a good idea. What we're going to do instead is I'm going to load up the aircraft with mostly white phosphorus bombs, and the plan is to make one pass over the transport vehicles, whatever they end up being, usually they're trucks, and make that one pass and just drop everything at once instead of the onesie-twosie that I normally do. And then after that one pass, whatever gets destroyed, and honestly it should be enough hardware to destroy a whole line of trucks, we should be able to pull up and away and then make our escape, hopefully before getting damaged or shot down, because this is a place, as we know, we don't want to hang out in. So 5,900 feet will be our approach altitude. We'll be 16 minutes in at the initial point, 18 over the target, and then we make our egress to the east, and then head back over the Gulf. Enemy fighters in the area could potentially be J-5s, a second J-5, MiG-21 PFVs, MiG-21 F-13s, another PFV squadron, MiG-17, another third J-5, and then our 3 AN-2 Colt squadrons that are stationed here. So those are a definite threat. As for other friendly squadrons going with us, we can see that there's almost nobody else, at least from the Navy. As we're clicking through here, almost none of these squadrons are participating. If we look down here, maybe some of the Marine units are going, but they all look like they're not doing anything either, so maybe we'll get some Air Force support. Nobody over here at Udorn. No B-52 action. Yeah, so basically we're going to be all alone out there, according to this map. We'll see if that's actually the case, but that's not a great thing either. Alright, here in the loadout for Aircraft 300 once again, I have 26 white phosphorus bombs, which should do a number on any sort of soft target, such as a truck. Cobra 2, as backup, will be loaded with 26 Mark 82 Snake Eyes. So that should be a good 1-2 punch. That should cover anything that we might come across and make sure that we can complete this mission. Cobra 2 today is going to be Lieutenant Bobby Heideck. He's flown 7 combat missions with no kills yet. Alright, that's going to conclude today's briefing. This could potentially go really, really sideways on us. So, hopefully luck's on our side today, and me and Lieutenant Heideck will be able to make it home safely. We're going to head up to the flight deck and prep the planes. We'll see you on up there for launch. Welcome up to the flight deck. As we get ready to go, we can see that it's a overcast day, but it's a high overcast, somewhere up in the 13 to 15,000 foot range, so that's not going to affect us because our visibility is still good. Here we go, getting ready to go, and catapult launch. There goes all that precious water from one plant spewing into the atmosphere, and we begin our climb up to our cruise altitude. Set our radar. Start making our turn towards our first waypoint. An aircraft carrier is like the queen bee of a battle fleet. As the fleet admiral's flagship, all information flows in and orders flow out. Carriers are impressive because of their size, but in a fight, they are extremely vulnerable. Exposed aircraft on deck are easily destroyed, and a few well-placed torpedo explosions below the keel can break the back of any warship. A carrier's biggest offensive and defensive weapon is her aircraft, and taking away the ability to launch them paralyzes her. Admiral Daniel Gallery wrote in several of his books that a carrier is like an old lady in a bar fight. She just needs to get the hell out of the way while the escort ships roll up their sleeves and get down to business. So, the primary defense of an aircraft carrier is the fleet of ships around it. Stationed in a defensive screen miles and miles away, picket ships scan the sky, surface, and depths for threats attempting to strike the fleet. Submarines are often quietly escorting down below, augmenting the anti-ship warfare of destroyers and ASW aircraft or helicopters. Pickets are stationed far enough away to give ample warning against incoming airstrikes or anti-ship missiles, and hopefully shoot them down before the carrier can be damaged. On my deployment, for example, our worry was always that Iran would decide to attack. Flight time for an anti-ship missile fired from shore would have only been 7 minutes, barely enough time to detect and identify the missile, and then get everyone to battle stations. Obviously, the picket ship strategy is not impenetrable, and since the days of World War II, carriers have been armed with defensive weapons as a final line of defense. The USS Essex bristled with guns when she went to war in the Pacific, sporting 12 5-inch guns in 8 turrets, 8 quad-mounted 40mm guns, and 46 20mm guns. Despite these impressive numbers, though, a kamikaze still managed to get through and do serious damage to Essex in 1944. After the war ended, when jet aircraft were getting larger and faster, modernization programs for the Essex class, like SCB-27, removed much of the weaponry to clear up deck space. The Ranger class of 1945 also received modernization through the 50s, removing weapons that were no longer effective against fast jet targets. 5-inch guns were now mounted in quad turrets, and 40mm mounts were replaced with 3-inch guns. Proximity fuse ammunition was used, improving efficiency by making direct hits unnecessary. Proximity fusing was another British invention from World War II that the US had improved upon. They used either fire control radars to send a radio signal to the warhead to detonate at the target's estimated range, or used reflected radio waves from the warhead itself to determine that it was close enough to detonate. When the Enterprise launched in 1961, the use of any anti-air guns was abandoned, and the ship was designed to defend herself with RIM-2 Terrier missiles. The RIM-2s were never added due to construction cost overruns elsewhere, and Enterprise went to sea instead with 3 RIM-7 Sea Sparrow launchers. These were located on sponsons on the forward-starboard flight deck, and port and starboard on the aft end. The RIM-7 Sea Sparrow was developed from the AIM-7 Sparrow, the radar-guided missile found on F-4 Phantoms. The Sea Sparrow system installed on Enterprise was in its earliest incarnation and was very simple. The missiles would be fired, then guided to the target by radar that was manually aimed by an operator. The early Sea Sparrow systems were designed to be quickly swapped out with obsolete gun systems on ships, but still use the same aiming radar. I have read some conflicting information that says that the Enterprise was commissioned with no self-defense missiles at all, and that the RIM-7s weren't added until 1967. Not quite sure on this. Until I get a better reference, I can't confirm which of the stories is correct, but I've seen more articles that say that she was built with the RIM-7s. In either case, after 1967, the ship would have the 3 Sea Sparrow launchers. The Sea Sparrow had some problems due to its design as a fighter-launched weapon. Instead of being launched at high altitude from a fast aircraft, the thicker air and low ship speed meant that the missile had to expend more fuel, and range was drastically reduced. The guiding wings did not fold, so launchers were large, and the missile was not very maneuverable in flight. In 1973, these issues were addressed with the introduction of the improved NATO Sea Sparrow Surface Missile System, or NSS-MS. This included the use of an all-weather automatic guidance radar. Through the 70s and 80s, Enterprise was upgraded with new weapon systems. By my time, in the early 2000s, we had 2 Mark 57 Sea Sparrow launchers, holding 8 RIM-7P missiles apiece. These missiles had a 90-pound fragmentation warhead and could also be used in a secondary anti-shipping role against small surface targets. These launchers were forward starboard and aft port. The ship's fire control radar could acquire targets 50 nautical miles away. The Sea Sparrows had a range of 9 nautical miles, but could be launched up to 12 miles away if the target was incoming. When in automatic mode, the ship could fire missiles at incoming targets with no operator input. Reload time was 150 minutes per missile. We also had 3 Mark 15 Phalanx close-in weapons systems, also referred to as CVN. These were located forward port, midship starboard, on the superstructure, and aft port, near one of the Sea Sparrow launchers. These were automatic tracking and firing, 6-barreled 20mm Vulcan Gatling guns, designed for shooting down very close-range missiles or aircraft as a last line of defense. Each gun had an ammo box of 1,550 tungsten or depleted uranium rounds, with a fire rate of 4,500 rounds per minute, giving it a maximum of 21 seconds of sustained fire. Reload time was 15 minutes. When in automatic mode, the CVN would detect targets at 10,000 yards and begin physically tracking them at 6,000 yards. At 2,000 yards, the guns would begin firing at the target, and firing would cease at 100 yards, all without human input. Sometime after 2006, RIM-116 rolling airframe missile launchers were added. Abbreviated RAMs, these are small, maneuverable, infrared-guided missiles designed to shoot down anti-ship cruise missiles. There were 2 mounts, one on the aft starboard, on the sponson where one of the old Sea Sparrows had been. The other took the place of the forward port CVN system, which was removed. Finally, to protect the ship from submarine threats, the Enterprise was equipped with the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie decoy system. The Nixie provided protection from torpedo attack by generating false noise and magnetic fields that would draw any homing torpedo away from the ship. Enterprise had 4 Nixies aboard, each consisting of a decoy drone towed 1,500 feet behind the ship by a fiber optic tow cable. We're coming into the coast here. ECM is on. Lieutenant Heiduck is off my wing. So far, no enemy activity, although we did see there on the map that there is a P-35 radar nearby, but no one is painting us yet, so that's a good thing. Coming over the coast now, and we're now over mainland Vietnam once again. We have a ton of targets on the radar. There we go. Oh, just as I brought the throttle up to try to increase our speed, we're starting to get tracked by a radar set nearby. "22 miles to go until the next waypoint, which is our initial, actually." Ooh. Radar-directed flak coming up at us now. Let's do a little bit of defensive maneuver here just to throw off their... Whoa! Okay, SAM inbound. Popping chaff, and we're gonna pull over. Let's see, can we identify where it's coming from? I have no idea. I can't see it. There it is. Alright. Alright, I think it's past us. Yep. And we've lost lock. Alright, so let's get back on... Whoa! That flak exploded right in front of the windshield. No sign of that SAM anywhere, so it must have gone ballistic and just headed off into the ether somewhere. Look at this whole half ring of targets right in front of us. Oh, what are you doing? Lieutenant Hyduck apparently is taking it upon himself to attack ground targets, and now has a SAM heading in on him. Sometimes the AI will, if they get a radar spike, if something is aiming at them, they will break off on their own and will actually attack anti-air targets. So let's get him back to me, because we don't want to get split up here. And in case something happens and I miss the target, I'm going to need him close by to take a second shot at the ground targets. Wow, this is a lot of flak. It's a highway of flak in front of us. Let's jink around a little bit, change direction, change altitude. Just firewall the throttle. Two miles to our initial point. (8,000 feet above the rice paddies. Bring the radar into 10 nautical miles. We're 13 miles out from our target, and there's Hanoi right there. Another SAM at Hyduck, another SAM at me. Break, break, break. Alright, a couple of chaff throws it off of our tail. That's good. Oh, there it was, right on the outskirts of Hanoi. Another SAM at Hyduck. Here's the Red River just off to our right. There's the Duong River off in the distance. We can almost see the Paul Doumer Bridge crossing the river downtown Hanoi. More SAMs coming in. If you noticed on the way in, the only other aircraft out today are reconnaissance F-8s. Another SAM coming in. Popping more chaff. If it's coming from that same site on the outskirts of town... Alright, let's just do a tuck under maneuver here. Try to get under it. Oh, blacking out. Whew. Just a few feet over the Red River here, and that's one of those SAM sites was right off the nose. I still have not detected any primary targets. Bring it right down on the deck here. Still no primary targets. We're only 3 miles away from the waypoint. Oftentimes you can see them by now if it's a big truck convoy. Some sort of factory there. And over the Duong River. We've literally hit the waypoint. Where the hell? There we go. Viet Cong Supply Bike 3. That's our target. So, down there in that rice paddy, Cobra 2, strike at the convoy, please. Alright, I've selected my Willie Pete's. We're going to come around. Whoa! Alright, anti-air fire coming right up from that site that we passed over the top of. And I can't quite see the bikes, but they're out there somewhere. And now we've got a MiG. Red Crown, Cobra 1. We're under attack, requesting assistance.
Cobra 1, Red Crown. Negative. We have no other fighters available.
How is there nobody available? This is a suicide mission. Alright, we can see there's a MiG-17 or maybe a J-5 on my tail. Down there in those little trees, that's where this convoy is of a couple. I've got 2 MiGs on me now. I can hear them. I'm not sure where they are. Alright, we're coming in. There's somewhere over here. Bombs away! We're gonna drop every single one of these in one pass.
Cobra, lead. Red Crown.
There we go. We just wrecked somebody's day. Alright, now beginning defensive maneuvers. I don't know where these MiGs are, but they are close. We're not getting any help from Red Crown. Or our planners. This is probably President Johnson's fault, since he insists on planning every strike himself from the White House. We're gonna get right down on the deck here and blow the leaves off these trees and try to escape. Secondary explosions out there. I think Hajduk just hit some targets. And get back with me, Hajduk. We need to get the hell out of here. We can see a MiG back there on our tail. Luckily, flying super low confuses the AI a little bit. Oh, but he's definitely coming after me. Hajduk is still dropping bombs on something, despite my order to rejoin. So that's good. Oh, thanks for that. Cobra 2 is hit. How you doing, Cobra 2? Oh, he is gone. Look at that. And there's his MiG killer flying away in the distance. Looks like the guys have punched out, but that is the end of Cobra 2. Great. Well, how many times did I tell you to rejoin, Hajduk? Seriously. And how many times did you go off on your own? Ugh. This really sucks. We were set up for failure by mission planners, and this is what comes of it. I lose 2 more of my guys from my squadron, both Lieutenant Hajduk and his bombardier navigator, and we're not out of the woods yet either. Power plant over to the right. Looks like we're coming up on the outskirts of what I think is Haiphong. You can see the cranes over here of the port area. So, and I hear MiGs on me still. Jeez. Yep, there's the exhaustive one coming up over my right. Alright, so, he is over there. There he is. Let's try and get back onto our tail. Or I'm going to maneuver over towards these cranes of the port area and try to make our way out to sea. Now the RF-8s are under attack as well. That's good. We're just... The 4 aircraft that they sent into all of Vietnam today are getting decimated. Whoa. That scared the hell out of me. Alright, coming right over the docks here. Lots of shipping coming in and out of the bay today.
Memphis 1, Red Crown. Copy. Cobra, lead. Red Crown.
And we're feet wet back out over the ocean.
6 o'clock, 10 miles. Angel, 10. heading
Leaving
north.
Vietnam behind. We're still
Stay
30
sharp.
miles away from our waypoint, and I'm seeing on my radar the Red Crown picket ships stationed off the coast here. Since we had that MiG-21 follow us all the way back to the fleet the other night, we're going to try to stop that, and I'm going to head out over Red Crown because these MiGs, I think, are still following me somewhere. We'll head out over these picket ships, and hopefully they can give us some surface-to-air support. If there's anybody following us, either they'll scare them off or shoot them down. And 20 miles away, we saw that ship just starting to come in. Where are those MiGs? Oh, this guy's actually heading away from us. Although he's in the snake paint scheme, and I thought the guy that was behind us was in a bare aluminum, but here's this poor RF-8 trying to make his way back out to the sea. VFP-63 Photography Squadron. We're at 800 feet and in excess of 500 knots coming up on Red Crown, which is about 10 miles away. If you guys want vector fighters to help me, then you can at least shoot down any MiGs that are following me. That's the plan, at least. Oh my god. Is that the second RF-8 going down? Possible. There we go, L&M Sumner destroyer targeted. I did look up the files on all these surface ships, and they are designed with weapons. They all have several guns and missile launchers, so there should be no reason why they should not fire at enemy aircraft in their immediate vicinity, because they are programmed with all the weapons on board. So they should be actual protection for me. If you remember in the last episode, I was not sure if that was the case, if they were just decoration, but supposedly they should be able to help us out. So there we go, we've passed over full power as I am going to climb back up to cruise altitude. And there's the two ships behind me. Anybody following me should now get shot at, I hope. We'll just keep going straight for a few miles to make sure that I drag anybody over those ships before we make the turn back to the waypoint. I think we have time for a sea story or two, so let's do that while we're on our way back to the Enterprise. During the very dark days of the 2002 shipyard, one of our guys made a great plaque that established our engine room's motto, which was 4 MMR, pushing 1, and pulling 2 and 3. It was very fancy. It was engraved on some black plastic with propeller symbols and the ship's seal. Now, this motto had double meaning, playing on the fact that physically, one plant was forward of us, and 2 and 3 were behind us in the aft group, but it also referred to how we had spent 10-hour days getting 4 main machinery room ready for startup and looking like new, while everyone else basically slacked off. We had been promised, by our chief, that when we were done, the chain of command would be impressed enough to let us go home early every day, while the other plants would be slaving long hours to make up for the work that they had ignored. Instead, the hammer fell on the whole department, and we were rewarded with 12-hour days instead, adding 2 more to what we'd already been doing. Insult was added to injury when our plant was forced to go to the other MMRs to help them clean and paint. This was a devastating blow, and the first of many incidents that would eventually break my faith in our chain of command. So, since we had to go fix everyone else's plant after we had spent months fixing our own, we truly felt like we were pushing 1 and pulling 2 and 3, in the metaphorical sense. The sign, as silly and simple a gesture as it was, gave us something to rally around. It buoyed our spirits and really gave us a sense of pride in our workspace, something that had been destroyed. We proudly glued it to the hatchway at the entrance to the engine room, and it lasted about 24 hours before we were ordered to take it down by the higher-ups. This, unfortunately, was during the time in the ship's history where our rock-bottom morale was constantly punished by making it worse. Any and all attempts to take pride in our spaces or show character were literally whitewashed away. A painting of the informal plant seal that had been in the wall in 2 plant for years was ordered painted over. Our sign was angrily attacked. Even the giant mural on the hangar bay that had paintings of every Enterprise ship was painted over white. They just wanted it all gone. Uniform blandness was the rule of the day. None of these things that were painted over were rude or offensive in any way, nor were they graffiti. People with artistic talent had put time and effort into painting these things, and now they were considered to be not professional, and so they had to go. So now fast forward a year or so, and we're on deployment in the Middle East. One plant had shut down its reactors for planned maintenance and was trailing its shaft. This was a fairly common occurrence, and we had no problem running with any of the 4 shafts down. But then there was a problem in 3 plant for some reason, and they had to scram their reactors unexpectedly. Still, not a huge problem. They simply cross-connected the aft group, and 2 plants' reactors were supplying steam to run the shafts of 2 and 3. Now, I've heard that cross-connecting is rare on newer carriers, and everyone freaks out about it, but Enterprise sailors are completely at home with crazy cross-connect setups. So my watch team and I showed up for our pre-watch muster, and we were briefed on the situation. Then we went and took over the watch after some jokes that 2 plant better not go down too. Ha ha. Midway through the watch, 2 plant suddenly announced that it had a chloride casualty, meaning that salt water was setting off alarms in the steam plant. Worse, the salt had already spread through the cross-connect to 3 plant, so both engine rooms immediately shut down and emergency response crews hustled to the aft group. Suddenly, it dawned on us in 4 plant that we were the only ones still steaming, and that our asses were on the line if anything brought us down too. The captain already blamed engineering and reactor departments for everything wrong with the ship, and now he refused to be the captain known for letting the Enterprise go dead in the water. So the bridge rang up a bell, and we answered it, and we didn't change any setting for the next 2 or 3 hours until we got relieved. Now, I've been accused of making this story up by older Enterprise sailors, no less, but we were there, and they were not, and I assure you, the Enterprise operated on 1 shaft. It's true that we must have been barely moving. The ship is not designed to run on a single shaft, but it didn't matter if the tide was pushing us backwards. The chain of command could still claim that we were still steaming and answering bells the whole time, which is technically true. The story is actually a perfect indication of how our chain of command was always more worried about covering their asses than anything else, including common sense. We felt that if we failed, those people would have come down on us with a big axe, so we didn't turn any valve, start or stop any pumps, do anything that might possibly change the steady state of the engine room. We were glued to the vacuum gauge on the main engine the entire time. I've mentioned before that the ship liked to sail through warmer waters in order to give relief to the flight deck crew. Well, that meant that our vacuum on the main was always in danger of suddenly failing out of the blue. It happened all the time. And if that did happen, you had to shut the throttles, you had to close down the air ejectors, and then reopen them up to try to redraw a vacuum. So, if hot water suddenly made our vacuum go away without warning, then we would have had to shut down the plant or we would have had to shut down the engine for at least a few minutes, and then we would have been dead in the water. Despite being anxious as hell that the plant might crash at any moment, we also laughed and cheered because we literally were pushing 1 and pulling 2 and 3. We had accidentally lived up to our motto. Oh. Alright, I'm totally spacing out there. I forgot that we were this close to the fleet. Shit, I should have begun my descent miles ago. Okay, well, we're gonna start doing that now. I don't know why I forgot that this was the waypoint to get set up for landing, but I did, so that's okay. What we'll do is we'll just follow the waypoints to the ship, and then as we pass over the ship, we'll get into a modified marshalling stack, and we'll just circle our way down. We'll either do one run through the holding pattern, or maybe a couple, and then once we're low enough, we'll do the thing where you leave the marshalling stack or the pattern, the holding pattern, and then you circle around and then hit initial. So no big deal. We'll just do what we can to get down into position for landing. It'll just take a few minutes longer than it should have, since now they are clearing us to land and I'm at 19,000 feet. Here we can see on the radar range of 5 miles, that's the carrier right there passing under us. There she is. Some weird graphical glitching going on there. And we're right over the top of the Enterprise. So now we get into the marshalling stack, which is a 5 mile wide circular holding pattern where the ship is always at the 3 o'clock position of that circle. We're actually coming down pretty fast. I don't know if we're going to do a whole circle, but you can see we're at 3 miles from the ship, 4 miles. So let's tighten up this turn a little bit. I want to keep it at 5 miles from the ship. As we drop down under 10,000 feet. And there's 5 miles on the DME. And there's the ship way out there. And I think we're just going to roll out and leave the holding pattern. Now in the real marshalling stack, apparently, you would only descend when you were behind the ship, and only climb when you're ahead of it to avoid any sort of collisions, you know, from the stacked up aircraft. So obviously we didn't do that. I'm just trying to dive down towards the water to get in position for our initial. But if we had the time or inclination, then we could actually do that. We could get into our 1,000-foot increments and then make these circles dropping 1,000 feet for every circle, only descending on the back half of the circle, and then finally, once we would get our clearance to leave the marshalling stack, we would depart as we just did, and then circle around to hit our 3 nautical mile initial point behind the ship. And we're still a little bit high for initial, but there's 3 miles. We're behind the ship. We're going to come in on the starboard side. Let's drop down to 1,000 feet. for our flyby. Hook is down and locked. Coming over the ship, brakes are coming out, and brake for landing. We were really moving fast that time, over 500 knots. It's a little bit excessive, probably. And here we are rolling out on downwind. We're just coming abeam of the landing area now. Gear and flaps. Pushing the stick forward to keep the nose down, but we're climbing anyways. And making that turn to base and final. Really, as we hit the base leg, we want to be aiming for 450 feet above the water, although we are much higher here. And that also feels really, really low. In this game, flying that low on final often means that you can't see anything over the nose, and you're flying blind towards the ship, which often results in just a crash because you hit the flight deck and you can't really see where you're going. So I fly him a little bit higher, although we're at 300 feet now. And I've got the radar off. Rolling in on the center line of the landing area. We're at 140 knots. Cobra 1 calling the ball. At this point, LSOs are taking over, guiding us in. We're on visual approach with LSO help. There's the arresting gear. And touch down. Bada bing, bada boom. There we have it. We've made it safely back home to the Enterprise as we taxi out of the landing area. Technically a successful mission, although, again, I'm kind of angry that we were set up for failure so bad because we've lost another one of our squadron members. But we'll talk about that down below decks in the briefing room. So we'll see you down there. Okay, welcome to the debriefing. Objective for today was to provide armed reconnaissance near Back Nin, search out and destroy any enemy targets moving into the vicinity. Flight time was 41 minutes and 24 seconds. 4 primary targets were destroyed, 1 A6 was lost, 1 A6 was damaged. Oh, I didn't know we were damaged. So we did succeed for a score of 1200, but at what cost? Let's look at the roster. Oh, Lieutenant Hyduck, prisoner of war. Punched out basically over Hanoi. At least he lived, was not killed, but he is a prisoner of war, which is where we were just earlier last year. Alright, looking at our stats. Horner, I fired 24 of my white phosphorus bombs, and I got the 4 kills, which were the primary targets. Hyduck fired 26 of those snake eyes and didn't hit anything, even though he was launching them all over Vietnam, hither and thither, flying off to go chase butterflies, and then didn't manage to hit anything that he was aiming at, unfortunately. Let's take a look at the log, because why not? We had a lot of SAMs launched at us this time. Guideline Mod 1 came up at me. Hyduck firing all those snake eyes, which he missed. You can see there's a couple of different models of SA2s out there that are in use, both the B and C versions. I don't remember off the top of my head what the differences in those are. That might be a good thing to research for one of these episodes. Okay, we had a J5 firing its cannons at me, which I don't actually remember seeing rounds, so that's a little scary. That may have been while we were maneuvering. So we finally launched those white phosphorus while getting shot at by the entire world. And we destroyed 4 Viet Cong supply bikes. Okay. And nothing else. I actually don't know if there was more targets to shoot at, because I still never really saw them. And then let's just take a look down here at Hydak getting shot down and see what actually did him in. Oh, there we go. A real MiG-17 Fresco D hit him with 23mm cannon. And he was shot down near Guy Lam. And he ejected safely, but was immediately taken prisoner. And I have sympathy for him, because that really sucks. Thanks for joining me once again on another A6 flight into Vietnam. This one was full of action and mixed with some heartbreak as we lost more squadron members to Vietnamese defenses. Join me again next time for more action and fighting over the skies of Vietnam. Won't you?